Emily had always known Mrs. Jenkins as the kind, elderly neighbour who lived in the quaint house next door. They exchanged pleasantries over the fence, and Mrs. Jenkins often shared stories of her late husband and their adventures. One day, Emily noticed something peculiar. The curtains in Mrs. Jenkins' house remained drawn all day, an unusual occurrence for the lively widow. Concerned, Emily knocked on her door, but there was no answer. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's concern grew. She called Mrs. Jenkins's phone, but it rang endlessly without an answer. The mailbox remained untouched, and weeds began to take over the once well-kept garden. Unable to shake the feeling of unease, Emily decided to contact the police. They promised to check on Mrs. Jenkins, assuring Emily it was likely a simple misunderstanding. A police officer accompanied Emily to Mrs. Jenkins' house. They knocked on the door, but again, there was no response. The officer tried the doorknob, and to their surprise, it was unlocked. They stepped inside, greeted by an eerie silence. Dust particles danced in the sunlight, filtering through the windows. The air felt heavy with neglect. As they ventured further into the house, a sense of dread settled over them. The living room was in disarray, as if there had been a struggle. Pictures were askew, and a vase lay shattered on the floor. Their search led them to the basement door, slightly ajar. A cold draft seeped from the darkness below. With trepidation, they descended the creaking stairs. In the dim light, they found Mrs. Jenkins' belongings strewn about. Her purse lay open, its contents spilled on the floor. But Mrs. Jenkins was nowhere to be found. As they turned to leave, a chilling whisper echoed through the basement. "Help me," it pleaded, sending shivers down their spines. The police launched a full investigation, but Mrs. Jenkins remained missing without a trace. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had happened in that house, and the mystery of her vanished neighbour haunted her sleepless nights.